folks, Saber4 here, coming at you today with a little bit of a different one. We're going to look at some of the best cards in Jump to Lightspeed and talk about what is new in the best set. Before we get started, how do I evaluate these cards? Well, these are for the Premier format, so these are not necessarily going to be ranked for other formats such as Draft or if you're playing in Sealed or Twin Suns. The rankings are based on playability, they're based on impact, and in some cases they're based on improvement. What did they do that was better than something in a previous deck? In some cases you'll find that these cards are grouped because they serve a similar function. So before we get started, if you have a moment and opportunity, head down to the bottom of the screen, click on that subscribe button. It will certainly help me out a lot. First off, honorable mentions. These are cards that I thought were very good. Some of them I think are things that I definitely want to play around. At some point, I'm for sure going to be running a Luke Skywalker deck, trying to accomplish a trench run with loaded up Luke. I mean, it's just going to happen. But in most cases, these are locked to a specific leader or deck, and are just not quite at the level where I put them in my top group. So like Trench Run, Red 5, and Red 5 can go on a lot of stuff. The Stolen AT Hauler and Fireball are very much Kazuda locks. Sabine's Masterpiece is a wonderful card, a huge tool for Spectres, but that means we have to be looking for a very Spectre-heavy deck to be able to really maximize it, because otherwise there's really very few ways to play in multiple colors. The Annihilator, wow, that's a fun-looking ship. I have no idea how it was that we got an Annihilator that's that impactful and an Executor that is not. But very much locked to only a couple of decks. The Fleet Interdictor, again, that's a huge Piet staple if you're playing blue. But otherwise, kind of, who knows. Chimera, amazing in Thrawn, meh in most everything else. And then the honorable mention combo here. I am working real hard on my Green Han deck, and I want to be able to play Starhawk in it. And here's kind of how we're getting to it, because the Green Han has a little bit more vehicle presence, and this gives me up to 6 opportunities to draw it. But to be able to run Starhawk and prepare for takeoff is kind of it's not really a broken combo, but this is a great combination to have to be able to draw this more than once when it's very central to how the deck operates. All right, number 10, Director Krennic. He is a great unit because he is a turn 1 shielded, something that Villainy didn't have a bunch of. Had several of, but not a bunch of. But he enables that resource cheat on when defeated units. Just is a really great piece to throw in for anything that does exploit. He's a durability upgrade because of the shield. His major deck is going to be Grand Admiral Thrawn. Kind of a 2-for-1 on this one. Torpedo Barrage and Planetary Bombardment fall at number 9. It uses that new mechanic of unpreventable indirect damage. Torpedo Barrage I like a lot because it is really high value, and in a small board you're going to be dealing 5 on that second turn. Being able to deal 5 indirect damage means that the base either has to soak a lot of it, or you're going to kill off that turn 1 unit. And then at the high end, Planetary Bombardment is one where you are able to really capitalize on some things like Boba or in Piet, where you have indirect damage, large capital ships, where you have the ability to just hit the board for 12. This really softens up a lot of breakpoints, makes it where some of the things that you're going to be trading into are much smaller just because of how you've hit them. The best use for this, I still think, is Boba Fett, because Boba can run yellow-red, since he's a red leader already, and Piet can't do that, so he has to choose one or the other. And then I also think Piet's best complement is probably blue, so this is a hard push to get into either of those. Number 8, Shoot Down. Shoot Down being a neutral red card, and red being a very versatile second color, makes this just a really solid one. I like this full art probably better than most of the rest of the set, even though it's not quite as interesting as, say, like the Prestige of Houndstooth. But this is a really versatile anti-space weapon. When you look at how JTL worked, being able to pop something in space for 3, especially to be able to do it turn 1. It can be a turn 1 counter in space, and for a deck like Boba Fett, you can use this as your non-combat damage, deal 2 to the base, and then turn around and deal an indirect, which they just have to absorb. It's an amazing play early. It's a good play late. Any decks in red without a major space presence can also use this to kind of pop some of those units and really either soften things up in space or shoot down and take out some of the smaller units in space to keep them from pinging them. Blue Leader sits at number 7 for me. Space Ambush with a ground upside. Wonderful, wonderful card to be able to drop for 3 and clear off a turn 1 unit, or to drop later in the game and add those experience tokens to it, where it can either come in and ambush as a 5/5 on the ground, or it can ambush, and if it survives the ambush, come to the ground as a 5 and whatever is left over from 5. It's a rebel trait, so it can replace Wing Leader. Although it doesn't provide you with the static bonus, it does provide you with ambush, and it is a more durable body than what Wing Leader had. And this fits well into Han Green, as well as any red-green heroism shell. At number 6, I've got Turbo Laser Salvo. This is a fantastic area of effect damage. It's a good alternative to Overwhelming Barrage, and it's a neutral alternative to Overwhelming Barrage. There have been times in heroism decks where I've considered playing OB for 7, just because of what it's capable of doing. But here I have a better version of that, where it's going to be able to do splash for every single target that's on a ground or space arena. And the only requirement is that I have a unit in space. Major decks with this, any green heavy space is going to be fodder for it. And then, of course, Piet is going to be, if you're playing against Piet and you're on turn 7, especially if you have heavy presence somewhere that he does not, go ahead and expect his space unit, whatever is out there, to be bombarding that area. Number 5, Commandeer. Commandeer, I think, might have gone higher for me, except for the fact that some of the others benefited so many decks better. This is by far the cleanest answer to an unpiloted vehicle, or at least the cleanest answer to an unpiloted vehicle that you're going to see in yellow. This is the same cost as Vanquish, but has the major upside. Take control of a non-leader vehicle unit that costs 6 or less without a pilot, ready it, and then bounce it. And so, Boba Fett drops out that War Juggernaut and pings everything on the board, exhausts everything. You don't have a whole lot left in your bag. Commandeer it. Swing it at them for the huge damage that they had out there. Take out Django. Do whatever it is that you had to do, but be able to clear that unit off for the next turn. Same thing can happen for any of Piet's big ships that are in the lower cost range. So that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to pull Devastator from them, but you could pull basically anything that he can do up to his flip turn. So it's a great counter for both of those. This will pull Fett's Fire Spray. This will pull the Relentless Fire Spray. So if your opponent is playing a red hard aggro deck and is dropping Relentless Fire Spray and is going to attack with it, commandeer it, attack, and then attack again. So it's a fantastic counter for anything that's vehicle. Number 4, Chewbacca. And this is a win now, and which is the reason why he gets up to the 4 spot. He's an acceptable alternative on the ground at a 5/6 for 5. That's not a bad stat line. But on the ground, he can't be defeated or returned to hand by card abilities, so he has a little bit of protection built in if he has to go to the ground. But he represents a gigantic space threat. This is a turn 2 lightsaber on any of your space units, except that now that unit can't be returned to hand or bounced. And so really, this is one of those things that if you're playing against Green Hero, you better deal with that ship first, either first turn or grab initiative and hope that you can deal with it right out of the gate. Creates real durability in that ship as well, because a +3/+3 really gets it out of range for most anything. You have some massive problems if Chewbacca gets out there into a ship and gets swinging. So you're going to see this in a green-red hero, and I've also looked at it again in Han Green. to be able to put this guy out there and just kind of take some big swings early. Number 3, this package is for discard, and it is Jam Communications and Ahsoka Tano. Easy and early hand disruption. This really, you see more benefit to this in Quinlan than anything else. But to be able to look at an opponent's hand and discard an event from it, as event heavy as some of these things are for one, is just excellent. It really makes their resource choices a bit different. And Ahsoka, if they're holding, if you think they're going to hold on to one of those units, or if you jam communications the last turn and you've popped some of their events out of it, now on your 4 resource turn, you're able to drop Ahsoka and potentially exhaust one of their units. She's a big improvement over K2SO, even though she is not as diverse. She doesn't have the overwhelm damage. She's not the 4/4. She's a little bit bigger as far as hit points body with 5. But being able to discard a card right now and exhaust a unit right now just makes her a better replacement. Major deck you're going to see this in is Quinlan Voss, but Han Yellow might also take a look at some of these as well. Number 2, I have IG-2000 and the War Juggernaut. These are massive tools for Django. IG-2000 fills a spot that you just didn't have in Django decks before. You didn't have a good 4-resource play. And now you have one of the best possible 4-resource plays, because it's going to deal 1 damage to up to 3 units. It can ping something off the board if it's still left, and then it can turn around and exhaust a unit, or you can bring it out on its flip and exhaust 3 units that are out there. So IG-2000, 3/4 overwhelm, I'm not impressed by, but it's a great target to pilot with Dengar or to pilot with the Boba Fett unit that we got. And so there's a lot of places that you can put somebody on a transport, and that becomes important. But good grief, the War Juggernaut. You can shoot space with this. It can shoot itself. It can target everything on the board and get damage, and then turn around and be +1/+0 for every damaged unit. It is, as I said earlier, susceptible to Commandeer, but you also can put this out early because it's a vehicle. You can target this thing on 4 resources with a triple Dark Raid and pop everything on the board, hit like a monster, come out, do it again the next turn with a sneak attack, and just have a thing that they can't really answer because you've done it on 4 or you've done it on 5, where if they take any kind of action, they're just out of range for being able to commandeer. Major decks for this is a huge upgrade, and one of the reasons why Django is going to be a complete monster to deal with in the early meta. Boba Fett loves these as well because they're non-combat damage, and really any red can use this War Juggernaut. It's such a beast of a card. That leaves number 1, and for number 1, I have Devastator. Devastator is here for some of the same reasons that War Juggernaut was in the previous deck, except that it represents a huge threat right now. Plus, this has the upside of being used in a Piet red shell or in a Thrawn red shell. So there's a lot of stuff that Devastator just fits, that some of the others aren't quite as good for. Does the barrage damage that you get to now choose the indirect when it comes in. And so if it comes in off of Boba and he is back on his leader side, you can deal that 5th indirect damage to whatever you choose. Anything that's running yellow-red villainy is going to be running this card. It's a perfect target for triple Dark Raid. It's an even better target for sneak attack. You bring this thing out there on a triple Dark Raid, and it represents 13 damage right now. So, good luck. Major decks you're going to see this in, like I said, yellow-red villainy and Piet red. So, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and we will see you next time.